Hello everybody and Happy New Year to you all. My name is Susan Sutherland. I'm the minister at Maastricht Parish Church here in Aberdeen. Welcome and thank you for joining me in my home today. On Epiphany Sunday we celebrate the visit of the wise men and Christ being revealed to the whole world. And only Matthew includes this story and you'll find it in chapter 2. And I'm sure we all have memories of nativity plays in churches and in schools. And I can still picture three kings adorned in Burger King crowns, glue on beards and bathrobes. I remember it so well because one of them was my son Craig. And these wise men were carrying strange collections of boxes and bottles intended to represent the gifts the Magi carried on their way to the manger. We remember the Magi mainly for the gifts that they presented to the infant Jesus, of gold and frankincense and myrrh. And we are moved by the fact that they travelled so far to present these presents. We are inspired by the fact that they presented valuable gifts, perhaps the best they could offer to this newborn king. And we think of all our own Christmas gift giving as being inspired by the Magi. The gifts were given, however, in response to a gift that they, the wise men, had received. They gave because they were given to. They gave their gifts because God had shown them a star, which they followed to the Christ child. Can we even begin to imagine what an astounding gift that was? The Magi were astrologers, likely from the area of modern-day Iraq or Iran. They spent most of their time gazing up at the stars. And out of all the stars on which they could have focused, God led them to see the one star that would lead them to Jesus, the Messiah. Amazing, isn't it? And when we look into the night sky, the vastness of it all amazes us. And out of the vastness, God directed the one star that made all the difference. The astounding thing about the revelation of the wise men is that they were Gentiles. According to the Gospels, the first announcement of the birth of the Messiah was to Jewish shepherds, men who lived on the fringe of Hebrew society. And the second announcement was to Gentiles, people who lived on the outside of that society. And yes, we are Gentiles. Yes, the announcement to these wise men was the first announcement to people like us. And even though it was always God's intention for the Hebrews to be a light to the nations, and for the Gentiles to be included in the kingdom, it took the coming of Jesus as the Messiah to throw the way for us wide open. And it took people like Paul to make Gentile inclusion in the church a reality. But God's truth won out. Salvation is by the grace of God through faith in Jesus Christ and nothing else. And we all come from different backgrounds, but we all come in the same way, through Christ. God went to the extreme of extremes to make salvation possible for people like us, who were outsiders. And I think we will gain something very valuable here at the beginning of this new year, if we reclaim the truth that the salvation of people like us, of someone like you, of someone like me, is a great gift from God. And we may have lost sight of just how astounding this episode of the Christ event was for everyone. God went to great lengths to let the Magi know about the birth of Jesus. He went to great lengths because what he was saying to the Magi was what he was wanting to say to the whole world. His sign to the Magi signaled from the very beginning that God's gift of his Son was for all, not just for a select few. The revelation of God to the Magi was an eye-opening experience. They were foreigners. They were practitioners of another religion, and they were astrologers. They bore characteristic after characteristic that should have disqualified them from having a positive experience with the Messiah. And yet, God showed them the star. They saw the star, and they followed that star. They were Gentiles, and yet God gave them the gift of his Son. Jesus came for them just as much as he came for the people of Israel. And again, we will gain something very valuable here at the beginning of this new year. If we reclaim the gospel truth that the coming of Christ means that the walls have come down, that the door is open to all, and that the church to be gathered around Christ will be a church that makes no distinctions because of race, of gender, or social standing. And I don't think we always take advantage of the gifts that we are given. When the wise men came to Herod's court at Jerusalem and inquired as to where the king of the Jews was to be born, the priests and the scribes, they knew the answer because they knew the Bible. He was to be born in Bethlehem. So the wise men headed off to Bethlehem, which is only 6 miles from Jerusalem. But can you believe it? The priests and the scribes, they didn't go with them. They just stayed where they were. That is something that hit me as I read this familiar story this week. The wise men only had a rumour. That's all they had to go by. But it moved them to make that long journey. The scribes, who were much better informed, much better versed, they sat and they studied the scriptures. But it didn't make them move. So who had the truth? The wise men who followed a rumour, or the scribes who remained sitting with all their knowledge? You know, it makes me wonder about us. God has given us such a tremendous gift. God has given us salvation. He has included people like you and me in his great plan of salvation. God has given us our fellowships, our Bibles, a free country to exercise our faith, and so much more. How, though, are we responding to his tremendous gift to us? The carol in the bleak midwinter puts it like this: "What can I give him, poor as I am? If I were a shepherd, I would bring a lamb. If I were a wise man, I would do my part. But what I can, I give him. Give him my heart." Can I challenge you by asking, are you really giving him our hearts? Are we really giving him our lives? The Magi, like us, had no idea what would happen next. But the twists and the turns in their story, the darkness of Herod's regime, that didn't dim the light. The star is there, leading and directing the Magi. The Magi are required to keep following. They're required to keep trusting. And so are we. In the darkness of 2020, in the uncertainty of 2021, do we believe that God's light still shines and still leads us? Wise men and women still search for him. Wiser men and women still find him. And the wise men and women, the wisest of all, they still follow him. So will you pray with me? Loving God, at the beginning of this new year, inspire us as you inspired the wise men to journey in faith, following where you lead until we reach our goal. And though we do not know the way ahead, and though the path may be hard and uncertain, not helped by the coronavirus pandemic, keep us walking in your light. And as much as I know how, Jesus, I open my life to you. This new year I want to accept you as God's gift to me. I want to learn to follow you and to trust you. And I humbly ask you to accept me into your family by grace, not because I deserve it, but because I put my faith in your love and in your life. And in your powerful name I pray. Amen. I would encourage you to share this message. It may be the greatest gift that you will ever give someone. God bless you. I love you. And I look forward to seeing you next week.